Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to PRATHAM Test Prep. So we have Mahira with us today. So Mahira, she's studying in NALSAR right now. So Mahira, which year?
I'm in second year.
Sorry. So Mahira, your voice wasn't
I'm
proper.
in second. Okay, so I am in second year now of law.
Okay. So Mahira, the CLAT is around the corner. You must be knowing that CLAT is on 18th of December. So we have our students who just want to know so many things from you. So that is why we just asked you to come and you are here with us. So Mahira, you know that since CLAT 2020, the pattern has been changed completely, right? So which year you have appeared, Mahira?
I appeared last year, 2021.
2021. Okay, so you know that students, they really need to improve their reading speed. Like, what will you say on this? Like, how can just student improve their reading speed so that they can just complete their paper on time? That is their main concern कि हम paper time पे complete नहीं कर पाते हैं. So what will you say on that?
So I mean, while the ideal would be to aim to complete the paper, but as we all know, CLAT is the most unpredictable paper there is. So they might just make the paper so lengthy that nobody is able to complete it. So even if you feel that the paper is extremely lengthy, you will not be able to complete it, you should know that it's lengthy for everybody. You are not at a particular disadvantage. So just have confidence in yourself to know that attempt as much as you can. Further, it is okay if you're not completing the paper as long as your accuracy is high, because it is no point completing a paper if half of your grades are gone in negative marking. So you should attempt to complete the paper, but don't get panicked by the size of the paper. It might just be extremely long. Then the strategy would be to not get stuck on one question. So this is not a school ka exam. You don't get one question, you keep looking at it 5 minutes and you think that answer is somehow going to come. So if you stare at the options long enough, one of the options will obviously stand out and you will think this is the answer. I've gotten it. It just came to me. Don't make that mistake. You will be sacrificing so many more marks for that 1 mark. Again, this is not a school paper. All the questions have the same marks. So you can attempt 3 easier questions and you will be graded much more. Don't get stuck. And if you feel like the topic is from something you know, but you will have to spend some time to get to the answer, you can come back to it if you have the time. So first attempt the questions that you know the answer for sure. Now, the strategy I followed is, if you look at 4 options and you can narrow it down to 2, means you know the answer. If you cannot narrow it down to 2, means it's a guess. Don't take guesses.
Okay, so Mahira, I'm just getting a question. So first of all, I request you to just change your name from panelist to Mahira. So that will be great help. Okay, Mahira, do we have any ideal score? Like this should be the ideal score. Like that is the thing the student generally asks from us.
So ideal score, I don't think there is. So what I usually aimed for was to get close to 100, maybe surpass 100 a little. But ideal score, again, I think somewhere close to 100 should be our ideal. But then again, it can vary a lot. Maybe 100 might be exceedingly low or it might be exceedingly high. Does not matter. What matters is the rank. So score standalone does not decide anything in essence.
Exactly. So Mahira, just one more question. हम लोग mock से decide कर सकते हैं क्या? For example, we are getting 60 marks in mocks. You must be remembering your time, Mahira, because mocks is something that we cannot check. But I want you to tell this to students. We can really check by looking at the score of mocks that we are getting that we may or we may not be able to just crack this exam?
So mocks are, especially Pratham mocks, I would say, they are extremely varied in difficulty, in length, in the type of questions. So they test you on every possible aspect. So you might not score as well on a mock simply because the mock was tougher. And from my experience, I can tell you, I never scored above 100 in my Pratham mocks ever. They are very difficult. But the actual paper was so much shorter, so much easier in comparison to it, that in my actual exam, I could score 103.25. So I don't think mocks would be a good measure. But I think Pratham also releases ranks. So once again, the focus should be on ranks. How are you doing in relation to others? So if you're getting a high enough rank, that means the paper was difficult, but you still performed better than the average. That is something you should focus on.
Okay, so Mahira, you must be knowing that consortium, they keep on releasing their sample paper, right? So did you attempt those at your time?
I think at that point when I was giving the paper, there weren't any sample papers as such. There were some sample questions from each section. I went through them. I think they are more important in understanding the type of questions as opposed to exact questions that might come. So they would be important in understanding the type of questions, but I wouldn't say attempting them would be fruitful.
Okay. So, Mahira, what was your strategy before 3 days of CLAT? What you did? Like you studied a lot, or like what you did actually?
So 3 days before CLAT, firstly, you have the relief of knowing that current affairs has ended. Nothing after today is going to come in the paper. So this is probably the only time you can actually revise current affairs. Current affairs is something that does not end. So now it has finally ended in some essence. So I think you should definitely revise the current affairs, and you should go from now recent to later. So if you're doing current affairs, you do this month, then the preceding month, then the preceding month. If you have the time, then I think you should do at least 6 months back. If you have a lot of time, then maybe a year. But don't do every possible current affair that happened. Focus on the important ones, because now you know which ones were important, which ones actually had like big consequences, which stretched for a lot of time. So most definitely do current affairs. But okay, so I am talking from my perspective. I had been studying for an year and a half. If you are somebody who has been studying just from a month, then I believe you might not have the time to recap current affairs. I would say do new current affairs. Right. Have a very streamlined study and do only the ones that were important. Right. And current affairs is something that requires some revision. I would suggest you to do. Other than that, I would definitely not recommend going on a frenzy of doing new questions. I would say maybe if you really want to attempt a mock or two now, but don't do a lot of new things, because that tends to push you into a state of panic. And it's not like what you do in these 3 years 3 days will determine completely how you perform. Your entire preparation will show whether it's been a month, 6 months, and year. So I would say focus more on revision. And if you come across a new question, analyze it, understand it, but don't go into a panic.
So Mahira, what was your mantra to control this stress? Like just panic ki hum baat kar rahe hain. So what you did actually to control this? Because students this time par bahut panic karte hain. Only 3 days are remaining for the exam.
Okay, so I would say $1 million question, how to not panic. So firstly, make sure you are getting enough sleep. I am somebody who does not spend all-nighter studying. If you are somebody, whenever you get your sleep, make sure you get a lot of it. So something
like of it, like Mahira, lot of it, it could be 12 hours, 14 hours. We have to make it specific. 7 hours, 8 hours.
I would just say don't deviate from how much sleep you normally get. If you are somebody who sleeps 10 to 11 hours, I would not suggest going down to 7 hours now. Okay? So because when you're less on sleep, it does affect how much panic you will go into. So be rested, be well rested, but also don't detach yourself completely. Don't think that the work has been done. Now it's 3 days of chilling. It is not that. You need to revise. You need to see if there are any gaps which you might have left. I'm sure there must have been some classes going on right now. Exactly. There must be this one topic you might have taken a little lightly, something that you thought maybe it's not important. Go back to those and do the less priority things, just some extra readings, because you never know what will come. The most irrelevant topic just might end up coming, and you might end up getting into the top NLU because of that one question you did, which is very possible, because you don't get colleges by even 0.25 marks. That is something that happens a lot. So I would say, firstly, sleep, extremely important. Cannot stress on this enough. Second, I would say how nervous you are, what state of mind you are, it is going to reflect in your paper. It will show how well you perform, how active you are in your state of mind. So just tell yourself that how you feel right now, if you can regulate your emotions, your feelings at this point, you will be able to do it when you actually sit down to attempt the paper. And how you feel at that time, it will reflect. So now your preparation for giving the actual exam the how to attempt the paper, not knowledge wise, but behavior wise, temperament wise. That is beginning now. So you need to learn to develop strategies to regulate emotions, which is extremely important. So I would say focus more on that.
So Mahira, you got all of these things after your exam, or you were that calm already during your exam?
So when I was actually, somehow I was confident, because you sit down with yourself and you think, if I could go back in time, would I have done anything better? If you think yes, what could you have done better? Do it now. You have the time to do it. And if you think you could not have done anything better, then you can still revise. So if you keep having these conversations with yourself and you convince yourself that I did my best, now the result is not in our hands. And after all, it's just one day in the whole year. Anybody can have a bad one day. It's not the end of anything. So you need to really talk to yourself about how you like law at large. And getting into an NLU or not getting is not going to be the end of anything. So when you look at the larger purpose and you self-assure yourself, you keep doing that. Take help from friends, from family to keep reminding you that the world isn't going to end and you have done your job.
So Mahira, during your preparations, you were pretty sure that you will land up into a good NLU because you were quite confident with your preparations.
I actually did not think so. Even during the last day of my prep, even my mom's confidence was getting a little iffy because that's something normally happens. But what I knew was that when I write the paper, I will give my best. And NLU or non-NLU, I am excited to study law and I will make a good lawyer, no matter where I do it from, because I have it in me. That is the mindset I went with.
Okay. So Mahira, what was your strongest section? Mahira, am I audible to you?
So my strongest section was strongest section was English. This is also something I wanted to talk about.
Yes, I think it's better.
Is my voice clear?
It's better. It's better now.
Okay. So my strongest section was English. What I had analyzed from giving, I think I gave close to 70 marks. But when I actually went to attempt the paper, I realized that English was extremely lengthy. So I changed my strategy last minute, which is something you should be open to. Be prepared to have to change your strategy, to be extremely flexible when the paper comes, but also have some idea of how to go about it. Don't be clueless. Sit down with yourself, analyze.
You were very strong in VA section, in verbal ability, and you started your paper with?
I actually ended up starting with current affairs, which was my weakest.
Okay, so how come that?
So when I went through the paper, English somehow it seemed so lengthy, and I don't know what happened, but at that point, it just seemed very intimidating. So I knew that even if C is difficult, it takes the least time. Passages are small, answers aren't that elaborate. So I decided to get done with as many questions as I could. And once you start going, the first circle that you fill, it is very difficult. You hesitate so much that what if this is wrong? But once you start going, then it sort of becomes easier. Then you get into the rhythm of it. So that is why I decided to do it. Look at whichever section will get you done with the most questions first. If maths is your strong subject, go ahead with that. But don't be afraid to change your strategy last moment, depending on what the pattern is of the paper.
Okay, so Mahira, like you divided time in between all the sections, or you just went completely like that only?
So I hope that most of you have tested at least 2-3 strategies when giving mocks. But I actually divided 120 minutes we have. I divided equally for all sections. Maths section is slightly shorter, but maths is very weak for me. So I decided to allot equal time. So what I used to do was, so if you divide it, then it comes 24 minutes per section, which I know ki legal I can do a little faster. Maths will take a little longer. So the cutoff point was me for, if it ends early, then good. But at no point of time can I spend more than 25 minutes in one section. So that is how I decided to go about it. And I think even in the end, I had almost 6-7 minutes extra to just do maths. So just keep the cutoff time 25 minutes. At no point should you spend more than 25 minutes. because
Okay,
there's
so Myra,
nothing.
one more question. Like you mark directly to OMR. We keep on telling this to students not to mark firstly with pencil or just experimenting. So you marked answer directly to the OMR sheet.
Yes,
That is the right approach, I guess.
because you feel like you will have time, but
You really don't have
there is
time.
barely any time. So be
Hmm.
sure and just know that most chances are you will not get time to come back to anything. So
Right.
your first shot is your final shot.
Hmm. Okay, so you started with VA and then you went to, sorry, you started with the GA, then you went to,
Legal, because
okay,
legal also I knew it is sort of strong. So
okay.
I did CA,
Hmm.
GA, then I
Hmm.
did legal, then I
Hmm.
went to VA,
Hmm.
and critical reasoning. I think that paper, I found critical reasoning personally very easy, but I also heard some people found it tough. Critical reasoning was a breeze. I think it took 12, 13 minutes total, and then maths for the end.
Okay, so I just want to add up over here something that it may be good for you to attempt VA and CR all together, but this may not be the right approach for all of the students. It may not be the right approach. They have to just manage it accordingly. What they feel is the strongest it that way. Okay, so Myra, one more question. Like, how did you eliminate questions that I don't want to attempt these? These will be going wrong. So, how did you eliminate questions?
Eliminate questions. So, very again, as I said, if you can narrow it down to two options, firstly, look at a question. I think VA still you will know, you might not be as sure whether you know or not, because a lot of it is stuff you are not supposed to know beforehand. You can
Hmm.
extract from the passage. So I
Hmm.
think VA, you can spend some time maybe deciding whether you know the question or not. CA
Hmm.
is hard skip. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, skip. Do
Hmm.
not take guesses. That will cost you very heavily. Then I think in maths also, don't do this कि मेरा 3.64 आ रहा है and the closest option is 5, so maybe I should choose 5.
Right.
Don't do that. It will cost you so heavily. Let it be. And legal also, I think once you read all the options, then firstly in legal you should come to an answer whether it is yes or no.
Right.
And then you read the reasoning, and most of the options are eliminated as it is. But a sort of thumb rule I had was, if I can get it down to two options, it is worth spending time on which one of the two. If it's more than two, even three, skip.
So basically, it is very important to eliminate what option is going wrong, and it is very easy to eliminate. In fact, if we know yes, हम automatically दो options पे आ जाते हैं. If something is no, वो automatically straight away cut हो जाते हैं. Right. Okay. So Myra, tell me, last 3 days है. So GA की preparations, especially the CA part, इसको sum up कैसे किया जाए? How to revise everything? Like for example, we were studying since January. So how to sum up in last 3 days?
So, to sum up, I think Pratham has monthly compendiums.
And Super 30 magazine also. We provide Super 30 magazine in which they get. Yes.
So, I think those are excellent resources to rely on. Now, I would not suggest now referring to a lot of compendiums or current affairs, because you will find current affairs compendiums which are 300, 400 pages big. Don't do that. And I would also suggest doing it monthly. Don't do a year big compendium. When you do it monthly, you know that I did this before this, and I know this event took place in February. So this must have been March. That really helps. Clumping together month's information. So I would suggest do month-wise from what Pratham has provided. Since you have been doing this all this time, a lot of new information is not going to sit in your head now. So that is how you go about it.
Okay. So Myra, during your preparations, was there any moment जब लगा कि अब मेरी तैयारी full है, I am going to appear for this exam? या कभी ऐसा कुछ feel हुआ इस moment पे, like 3 days before your exam or 1 day before your exam?
I would say, so I had made a schedule, because I am the kind of person who would have spent 24 hours just studying. And I know that will be more harmful than beneficial. It will send you in a state of panic. You won't, what you know, you will get confused about that too. So I think I stopped studying the evening before. I am not the sort of person who could have sat free for 1 day, but this is a call you should take when you think that you're comfortable enough. But I would say an evening before is a good time, decent time to stop studying, and absolutely do not study the night before. Nothing good is going to come out of it. Just relax.
So Myra, I totally understand what you're trying to say, but my question is, how did you keep your calm? Like, I have to keep calm. Like, did you like paste a poster or something in your room? Like, how did you keep your calm? Because it's a panic state for all of the students right now.
Definitely. I think talking to others who are in a similar state helps. Talking to mentors, teachers who have taught you all this time, amazing help. And now it's very easy for me to say because it's been some time. But the thing is, you cannot eliminate the panic. It is going to be there. Your aim should be to control it somehow. So what I did was I was continuing my studies, but when I would take a break, I would strictly not think about studies. I would not talk to my family about it or friends about it. So have some cutoff time, like absolutely no studies. And something, I don't know, it worked for me. It might not work for everybody, but in my free time, I used to go to YouTube and I would look up videos like campus tour of NALSAR or campus tour of NLS. And I don't know, that sort of calmed me that one day I'll be here. So if that works for you, go ahead.
So, Myra, how is the life in NALSAR?
Life in NALSAR. So it is extremely interesting, I would say. I would not say it's easy, it's difficult, it's interesting. Another thing, it is totally worth it. Even though I'm in my second year, I've given a good amount of tests in NALSAR exams and everything, project submissions. But I would still say that my preparation for CLAT was something else altogether. It is very competitive, very difficult to retain that amount of information, and also the anxiety of whether I will get in or not. So I would say that the effort you're putting in right now, I can assure you it is going to be worth it. It is going to probably change your life altogether in aspects you can't even imagine. And when I cleared CLAT, I also thought, okay, I'll be going to a good college. But these are not just colleges. They are a whole universe of law education, of so many life skills in general.
Right. You learn so many things. You meet so many people from the different culture. You meet so many people with diversity. You learn so many things. Okay, Myra, when you appeared for CLAT, was there any surprise element in the question paper? Like, आपने देखा and लगा रे ये क्या आ गया? ऐसा कुछ भी, something in your time?
A common surprise that everybody found was CA of that year. All the irrelevant things came. So I would say that was a surprise. But again, I had given so many mocks. And if you have confidence in yourself, I knew it's difficult for me. It's difficult for everybody. Right. So that is a good mindset to dealing with surprises. But for sure, surprises are going to be there and we can never foresee them. CLAT consortium is just built like that.
Right. Okay, so Myra, are there any things which students should not do in last 3 days? Something they should actually avoid in last 3 days of their preparations? Yeah, you avoided something.
So firstly, it would be to do a lot of material hopping, doing things from this institute, then that institute, something your friend sent, something your lawyer uncle sent. Don't do all of that. What you have done till now, keep focusing on that. And also, don't go into a state of panic. I think that's the most important right now.
Keep calm.
Also, one very important thing, if you have maybe, I don't know how many physical tests you've given, but you should definitely practice at least 2 to 3 mocks on OMR. It's not about the accuracy, but it has happened so many times with me personally that I know the option is A, but in some other question I mark A. And that is something that will happen if you haven't practiced yet. So most definitely practice on OMR, at least twice.
So Myra, in last 2-3 days, how many mocks you have given in your time before appearing for the exam?
I think I gave 2 mocks, 1 each, and the most of the focus was on OMR itself because I had messed up 2-3 OMRs, and when you lose a question to a stupid mistake like this, it hurts a lot.
Okay. So, Myra, one more thing. According to you, how much time we should give on VA and CR section specifically? Like, what do you feel that this should be VA, this should be CR? Like, how do you define that?
I think CR is, if you are trained well enough, if you have practiced enough, CR is usually not that difficult. If you have a hold of the technique, it is never of a very difficult level. English, VA can still be a little advanced. Critical reasoning is usually not that advanced. So I think the extra time you spend in VA, you can make up for in LR, in CR basically. So I would say 25 minutes for English and maybe somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes for CR.
That should be good.
That should be good.
Okay. So what are the last minute revision, techniques or something जो last moment पे हमारे काम आए, कुछ ऐसा?
Definitely. So if you have time, then I would say CA, as I cannot emphasize enough, CA you should do. Legal, maybe basic concepts you can go about. CA mein I would legal mein I would definitely say the postal rule of the contracts. CLAT consortium seems to love it. So I would suggest you practice, and the questions that come from it can be quite complicated.
Right.
So make sure you understand the concept well. Then I think in legal, you can also brush up contracts and torts, because I feel like these are the main things that will come.
Exactly. And Mahira, if I don't know you have seen that or not, just the paper that happened last year. Mm-hmm. So what they did in the legal section, especially, they asked most of the questions from the traditional law. They were asking questions, most of the questions from the constitutional law, then torts law. And I think जब आपने exam दिया था, तब उस time पर they asked questions from the legal current affairs as well, right? But now it's like a completely shift to the traditional law, like what we are teaching them in the classroom. So I think आप सही कह रहे हो कि practice जितना करेंगे उनके लिए उतना अच्छा रहेगा. And it's very important, I think, for them is to just analyze what is wrong basically. उन्होंने क्या गलत किया है. बहुत सारे ऐसे questions होंगे जिनका आंसर ठीक नहीं किया था, and there are very silly mistakes. For example, when the Constitution of India was adopted, for example, this is the question. They will still mark 26 January as the answer, but they know this is something which is a silly mistake. So I think it's better to just jot down everything, to revise everything what they have done. And yes, Mahira jo aapne importance of sleep ka importance diya. That is very important, but I want to correct it. Importance of sleep over here does not mean that they need to sleep it till 10 or 11 a.m. in the morning that day. They just need to take a proper sleep. It may be 7 hours, it may be 8 hours, depending on what their body needs for that. Right? Okay, so Mahira, any additional things that you want to tell to your juniors who may be joining you soon in NALSAR?
Yes, I hope to see a lot of you in NALSAR. And if you do see me, please come and talk to me, because it's a thing that when you're from the same coaching institute, you usually stay together in college.
Right.
So one thing I would say is reach the examination hall early. I'm sure everybody would have told you that. But not just the campus where your exam is going to be. Enter the hall, the actual hall early. See how the weather conditions are there. Because if you're giving it from different states, different places, and the halls vary greatly. Some of them might be better made. Some of them might not have as good furniture. So make sure you're prepared for all of that beforehand. Carry maybe a jacket if you live in cold places, and just make yourself comfortable in the hall. Because the hall where I gave my exam, I think it was July. So it was quite hot here in Delhi. And they had an amazing AC and I was very impressed. But 15 minutes in, the AC got extremely cold. And it was very distracting. And that time you do not have time to get up and talk to the invigilator, get the AC reduced. You just have to give the exam with it. And those things do affect. So make sure you're comfortable with the atmosphere of the hall.
Right.
Get used to it. Obviously, take your bathroom break beforehand. You cannot go in between. You cannot afford to waste time. Make sure you have all your stationery. You have your water. If you're taking any other medication or anything extra, make sure all of that are in place. And in case you don't have enough space on your table or anything, do not hesitate to keep things on the floor. Just make sure you have enough space on your table, because a whole question booklet and OMR is going to come. Make sure you have enough space for that. And absolutely do not look around. Do not see कि वो इतनी जल्दी pages क्यों पलट रहा है, उसका इतना कैसा हो गया. Maybe they're skipping, because when you hear it's extremely silent. And when you hear pages being flipped very fast, you get a little panic कि उनका इतना हो गया. Don't do that, and be very sure to not write anything on your question paper. Don't write anything. I know some people have a habit of making religious symbols. Do not do any of that. You will get disqualified. Make sure, be very careful when you're writing your roll number and everything on the boxes. It can get a little irritating, but be very sure of that. Because such stupid things, if the administration wants, they can disqualify a paper. And that would be a waste of an entire year.
Right.
So very small things we often forget to pay attention to, but extremely important.
Right. So Mahira, basically students के पास system 2 questions होते हैं which they really want to know. Number 1, will we be getting extra sheets to do our extra work?
I think when I was giving the paper, we did get extra sheets. You can always request for them.
In fact, if we do not request, it is always mentioned. Like the important thing for students is to read the instructions beforehand. What is written over there, what you can bring, what you will be getting over there. So yes, they will be getting the sheets. And number two is, do we have to fill the OMR sheet in between the exam duration, or will we be getting it before the exam, like 15 minutes prior to exam?
So you get the question booklet, it is sealed. So you can't open the question booklet. You have to write your roll number on the question booklet as well, and you get the OMR. So there is separate time to fill the OMR. And then, so you don't have access to the questions, just time for filling the OMR. Again, do not act smart and open the booklet beforehand.
And so yes, students who, they have to stay away from those students as well जो exam hall से पहले एकदम सब कुछ cram कर रहे होते हैं. This exam is something in which students need not cram anything. What you have done, आपको वही करना है जो आप practice कर चुके हो, जो आपने किया है. You just have to do that thing only. Okay, so
I would actually suggest staying away from crowds in the examination hall, because there will be people who will be making plans on ऐसे बता दियो वो 4 कर दियो. Stay away from them, because you never know what you might get caught up in.
Exactly.
So that.
Okay. So I think Mahira, students, they got a very detailed idea of what to do and what not to do at these last moments. So thank you so much, Mahira, for joining us. And we would love to see you sometime again in future. Okay. Thank you, Mahira. Good luck.
Thank you, ma'am.